Hey, welcome back to the Big Rand Show. Thank you for joining me. Now, 20 years of war in Afghanistan is over. We have left. Our military is basically gone, and our people have basically all been carefully removed from Afghanistan, minus some people that we are still working to get out, and still working with people in Afghanistan to get them out. But before I talk about the criticisms of the Biden administration and the things that I think they did right, or things that maybe they couldn't control, let's have a little discussion of why we're here. In 2001, we all remember 9/11. A very tragic day. A day that I still, even though I was 5,000 miles away from New York, I still see visions of what happened, in my nightmares. So, it was a very traumatic and very terrible event that took place in this country. And I fully supported George Bush in his attempt to find Osama bin Laden at first. In fact, I didn't sleep hardly at all waiting for our response. And then it happened. The war in Afghanistan started. Why? Because the Taliban was harboring Al-Qaeda. And at the time, we believed Osama bin Laden, which he was probably there at some point. So the Taliban and Osama bin Laden were the ones that attacked us on 9/11, right? And we should have gone in, found bin Laden, and that should have been it. But when we didn't find bin Laden, George Bush started another war in Iraq, which took our focus away from Afghanistan. And then shortly before he left, we never found bin Laden under his watch. But before George W. Bush left, he decided that we would turn Afghanistan into a nation-building project. Something the American government and our military really just isn't designed to do. And we're not good at it. At least, we're not good at it unless we stay an occupying force of the country. But, at the time, going into Afghanistan seemed like the right thing to do. We had 3,000 dead Americans, and it was something that just had to be done. Now, I believe we went about it a little wrong. I don't think we went about it in a correct manner, because we did not find bin Laden. In fact, there were reports back in 2006 even claiming that we did have a chance to have him, and George W. Bush called it off. For whatever reason. Maybe he had legitimate reasons, maybe he did not. Maybe it's the fact that he and his family are tied to the Saudi royal family and didn't want to end up killing bin Laden. But either way you go, in 2011, I believe it was, under the Obama administration, we took out one bin Laden. We found him in a little in a house, in a compound in Pakistan, with lots of porn, which is kind of funny, isn't it? Somebody's supposed to be a religious leader. But no. We ended up getting him. And that's great. But the problem is, that's when it should have ended. We should have left him. We should have left Afghanistan within a year at least, or less, of us taking out bin Laden. But the Obama administration refused to leave. They continued the George Bush plan for nation building and trying to build a democracy in Afghanistan. Now, that's a great idea. Sure. You want more democracies in the world. That's an awesome idea. But clearly, with corruption and things like that, it just wasn't working. It just didn't work. Clearly, the people of Afghanistan didn't trust their government. Their military wasn't strong enough because of corruption. And the Taliban retook it recently. But the fact is, here we are 20 years out. 20 years out, about to, do a memorial for, the 3,000 killed 20 years ago, September 11th. Now, there have been a lot of criticisms of Biden, some reasonable and some just, off base. So let's talk about a few criticisms that are on point. We didn't do our due diligence in making sure that the Afghan security forces were able to take care of themselves, to make sure they could defend themselves. Our intelligence got it completely wrong, saying we had at least 60 days. That was the minimum. 60 days after the day we left before the Taliban would overrun the country. And we didn't make sure of that. We didn't do our due diligence. So that falls on both the Trump and Biden administration. More so the Biden administration, as he was the one overseeing it as we led up to our leaving. 2, the Biden administration, as well as the Trump administration, did not hold the Taliban to the fire when it came to being, involved in the deal. They didn't make sure that the Taliban followed the rules and such of the deal. There were things they weren't supposed to do. They were supposed to cut down on their violence. If they didn't, they increased it. The only thing they did do was stop attacking U.S. troops. And at least seem to be fighting a war against ISIS-K. Now, either way you go, it doesn't matter who the president is, you still needed to make sure you did your due diligence, which we should have been doing. But we did not make sure the Taliban was following the deal, and guess what? They never did. And those are 2 legitimate criticisms. And this is something that, there again, Joe Biden should have been paying attention to. Because the whole thing for us to leave in that deal was that they were supposed to cut down violence, stop attacking women, things like that. And they didn't do it. So those are things that we could have done differently. That, yes, the Biden administration should have done differently. And I'll say this too. This criticism of Joe Biden is one that I have. And it's the fact that when everything first started going to crap in Afghanistan a few weeks ago, he took the responsibility on himself. Right? He's like, yeah, these other people didn't end it either, but the buck stops with him. That he needed to make sure everything was done. But his last speech made everything peachy keen and rosy. Like everything went great without a hitch. And then for when there were in discussing the problems that did come up, he blamed them on other people. And that I do not support. That is not the Joe Biden I elected. That is not the Joe Biden I've watched for the last 20 years. But those, I think, are 3 legitimate criticisms of Biden and what happened. I don't believe Biden is completely blameless in what took place. I do not believe that, that only Donald Trump is to blame or that only Biden is to blame. But Biden does bear some responsibility for what took place. Now let's talk about the criticisms that aren't really legitimate, aren't based really in any kind of reason at all. For example, they're saying that it's all Biden's fault that the Taliban ended up with a lot of our weapons, machinery, and vehicles, such as helicopters, planes, and some armored vehicles. Now, let's think about it. You're trying to get people out. And then all of a sudden, basically a civil war breaks out where you're at. And an enemy takes over the entire country in the matter of a week and a half. You don't have time to get your weapons out. You don't have time to get all your helicopters, planes, and armored vehicles. You're just not going to. You're not going to have time for that. As well, some of the stuff, especially the armored personnel carriers, things like that, were meant to help the Afghan military who was supposed to stand and fight for their country. and they didn't. So I don't really believe that you have to blame Biden for this. I don't think there's a criticism here of Joe Biden. And I've spoken with a number of different people that were in the military over the last few weeks, and many of them saying, unless you're in the situation or have been in that situation, you just don't know. You may not understand why it went down the way it did. But I've been told by these people and through reading that a lot of times when we leave, war fields, we leave stuff behind. Especially if we don't have time to get it. Tied to this criticism is a fake video. Or it wasn't a fake video, it actually happened. But it wasn't what the media, like Fox News, reported it as. They said that there was a video that was supposedly the Taliban flying a Black Hawk helicopter over Kandahar and hanging somebody from it, to kill them. But that wasn't what was taking place at all. First off, they haven't been able to even verify that the video, right, had anything to do with the Taliban. That hasn't been verified. 2, the guy is wearing a harness, not a noose. So whatever it was somebody perfectly alive wearing a chest harness as they dangled from a helicopter. Why? I don't know. Was it the Taliban? Was it somebody that, our military at some point trying to, get people out? I don't know. But nobody's verified it, so there's really no reason to speculate. It could be anything. But one thing it wasn't was what Ted Cruz and others tweeted on Twitter about yesterday. Another thing about Joe Biden and criticisms that I don't think are warranted. They're claiming that he didn't do anything to get Americans out. We did airlift 120,000 Americans and Afghans out of Afghanistan. In 2 weeks, we did 58,000 people. 58,000 in 2 weeks. It is an amazing feat for a president of anybody to accomplish, let alone Joe Biden. Now, did we leave some people behind? Yes. Are we still trying to get them out? Yes. We are trying to get them out, trying to figure out how, and we're working on that. Trying to see if they can get, because there's still going to be flights leaving. It's just not going to be U.S. military flights leaving the Kabul airport. There will still be airplanes leaving the airport and other ways to get out. Another criticism that I don't think is legitimate either is this claim that he banned the U.S. military from going and rescuing a Washington Post journalist. Now here's the thing. This journalist ended up being saved by the British SAS. So, they got rescued, okay? But why were they taken? Why were they rescued? Because when they got there to take these people out, or get some people out, these Washington Post journalists were still there. And all it took was a call to the U.S. Embassy. And boom, it was greenlit for them to be taken too. So if Biden had banned these people from being rescued, this would not have occurred. Think about it. Would the president have banned the rescue of a Washington Post journalist? Have greenlit the rescue by part of our coalition? The answer is no. So those are some criticisms that I just don't think are legit. But I want to leave you with one thing that does piss me off. One criticism I have here that I left out because I wanted to talk about it in full here. There are thousands of Afghans that helped Americans. Translators and other people that helped facilitate our military's operations in Afghanistan. And they've been left out. Their visas were not complete before this took place. Now the thing is, we should have made sure that all their special visas were approved and ready to go, and that they were all vetted before we started our pullout. And I solely place this on Joe Biden and his administration. This is a fact. The fact is, thousands of Afghans who helped our military are in harm's way now. Not because they couldn't have been or flighted out, not because they couldn't have been, part of the withdrawal, but they didn't have anywhere to go because their visas weren't done. And many of them that did leave, some of them that did leave that their visas aren't ready, they're stuck at a freaking military base in Germany. Why did we not take care of these people beforehand? Now, if there were some stragglers that didn't get their paperwork turned in on time, that's one thing. And we'll discuss that in a minute too. But the fact is, these people helped us, and their lives are at risk because they helped us. Do you really believe the Taliban is just going to sit there and let these people that helped the Americans, who kicked them out of power, live? Doesn't matter how moderate they want to play themselves off as. The Taliban is still a terrorist organization, hell-bent on killing as many people that are connected to America as possible. I mean, come on, look. As they consolidated power, they incorporated Al-Qaeda and ISIS fighters into their fold, into their top leadership positions. So do you think these people are safe? No. So I blame Joe Biden wholly on this one. Because, yeah, we may have started the process under Trump, but we should have made sure all these visas were done under Biden. Should have made sure it was all right. Everything was correct and ready to go for these people before August 1st of 2021. If you ask me, this isn't just an abdication of our responsibility for these people. We told these people if they would help us, that if they would help our military, that they would be able to leave Afghanistan if they wanted to and come to America. In case we ever left. In case they didn't feel safe in their home. And this can't be something that's easy for these people. Born and raised there, lived their entire life there, loved their home and family, and risked all that to help us, and we're leaving them there. Not because we couldn't have airlifted them out, but because we haven't finished their visas. I know no one's going to see this hardly, besides maybe my 6 viewers that usually watch my videos. But if anyone, out there sees this video, please, tweet Joe Biden and anybody in our government to make sure these people get their help. Share this video. But it sickens me to know these people did so much work for us, yet we're just leaving them there to die. Because we didn't do our homework. Now, lastly, let's talk about those people that are still, the Americans that are still there. Back in April, the State Department sent out a memo to everybody saying, we're leaving August 31st, get out. Right? I think they said September 11th at that point. Get out. Get yourself prepared to leave. Yet many of the people, Americans that are left in Afghanistan, are there by choice. They didn't get their shit together. They didn't take care of business. They had the ability to get out and they didn't. They've known since April and they chose to stay. I saw an interview on CNN the other day where a woman was crying, this Afghan woman was crying about these people, these Americans that she was trying to get out, that she couldn't get out because they waited to the last minute. And the infuriating thing for me was to know that one of these women that this woman was talking about has disabled children in Afghanistan with her, and chose to wait to the last minute, the last week, literally the last 48 hours of us being in Afghanistan before they decided to start moving. And they missed the last flight because of it. Now, I'm not going to sit here and blame the victims. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to put a little bit of fact out there for you. Think about it. If you tell somebody, hey, this is going to happen at this date on this time and it's going to be terrible, or something, right? Say you planned a trip even, and you're like, on this date at this time we are leaving. If you're not here by this time, you're left behind. Do you wait days and days and days and days for that person to show up? Or when they don't show up on time, do you go ahead and leave? The answer is you go ahead and leave. So I don't have a lot of sympathy for those people that were warned and could have got out. But I am very angry at that Afghan people who have been trying to get out and filed the paperwork on time were either left in Afghanistan or stranded in a German military base. So those are some valid and invalid criticisms of Joe Biden. I do believe the original war in Afghanistan was warranted. After what happened on 9/11 of 2001, we had to do something. We shouldn't have stayed, though. We should not have been an occupying force in Afghanistan for 20 years. But for a number of reasons, we stayed. But I'll tell you this. There was nothing we could do that would have made things go differently when it came to how the Taliban took power and took our weapons that we had left for places. There are a number of reasons why they had the numbers that they did, and that the forces for Afghanistan's security forces didn't do their job. Anyways, this has been the Big Ranch Show. I've been your host, Jacob Keck. I'll see you down the road.